Hello friends. On behalf of Hindustan Times and Mint, it gives me immense pleasure in welcoming you to the inaugural virtual edition of HT NxT, a thought leadership platform for the newsmakers of today. This is the first of its kind platform that is focusing on pertinent issues and companies that offer innovative solutions for the better tomorrow across sports, entertainment, business, and entrepreneurship. The summit is spread out over 3 weeks and is being hosted live virtually, will focus on a particular genre that is pertinent to all you young minds who are looking for inspiration. The theme for this inaugural edition is Leading the Change, which explains why our today's guest is Naveen Tewari, a founder and CEO of the InMobi Group, which now comprises three units: the Unified Marketing Cloud, True Factor, and Glance. Now, those who know Naveen Tiwari as the founder and CEO of the Indian unicorn InMobi may find it hard to believe that he was completely uninterested in the business world for most of his student life. I mean, that's the conversation that we have had earlier also. In fact, had it not been for his 3 year stint with consultancy firm McKinsey and Company, and subsequently as a member of the team of McKinsey that worked on a project with Reliance Infocom, now known as Reliance Communications, Navid would perhaps would have never founded InMobi, which today is one of the world's top advertising technology companies. Today, the InMobi Group already has two unicorns. Of course, one is official, one is unofficial. One is what we have reported. Naveen and company have not said yes to that. But InMobi, of course, became India's first unicorn in 2011. And the group's subsidiary content platform, Glance, also has reportedly touched a valuation of over $1 billion during the pandemic in 2020. Now, how did Naveen rise to the occasion despite there are so many initial setbacks? What were the challenges he surmounted and still faces? How does he view entrepreneurship and the work life balance? And what's his advice to entrepreneurs who are setting out on this challenging journey? These are some of the questions we hope to cover in the next 30 minutes or so. But first, the first 15 minutes will be devoted to Naveen telling us his own story in his own words. So I would now like to invite Naveen to deliver a short keynote, following which we will have a discussion about his entrepreneurial journey at InMobi. Naveen, the stage is all yours.
Leslie, first of all, thank you to you on behalf of for both you and HT Media and Mint for inviting me to HT NxT. It seems like a great initiative, and I'm honored to be here to share my thoughts on on this platform. What I'll do is I'll share a little bit of my journey. As an entrepreneur, the journey is always evolving. So every time you come in and you share the journey, there is a new version of it that comes out. And we love to have conversation with you, which I've always enjoyed, by the way, whenever we've had them in the past, and answer any questions that you might have. We started about 12, 13 years ago when startup wasn't really the thing that people would take, and it was based on a very simple concept or a dream at that point of time. It'd be incorrect to say, we had sorted things out. We hadn't sorted things out. We hadn't researched enough, and I don't think entrepreneurship is about, being very methodical and planned about things. It is about being crazy. And, if there were a few keywords that I would use throughout my entrepreneurial journey, it is a lot to do with doing things which were crazy. It was being very innovative, and it is also having a lot of faith. And those are a few things that I would argue have led us to where we are today, and we're very, very happy with ourselves on where we stand today. But going back to 12, 13 years ago, I remember the first phase of our journey. It was not easy. It was the phase where we were just trying to build a business that has legs to stand on, and had some meaning. And in those days, the only examples one could look at were the examples that were mostly in the US, and we were in the enterprise software business, right? So we were building enterprise products, and there were no success stories coming out of India. Actually, there was no success story, out of India for any product or internet company. So it was very hard to essentially take, some learning or anything from anybody. And so therefore, we were literally in a barren land, felt like an adventurer trying to go into this whole, wide field and trying to figure things out. And I would say that first few years was, I would put them in the phase of what I call the guts, right? Because you were making decisions not based on some preconceived notions or ideas and thoughts and frameworks, but you were having to make decisions based on what felt right. And that's not necessarily easy. So for example, I'll give you a few things, to bring that to context. The first one was, we were building a product company out of India. It had never been done before. And so therefore everybody called us foolish, and we still went ahead and said, look, no, I think there is, it is time for us to build a product company out of India, and I think we can build one. It did take its toll, but I'm so glad that we did so, because eventually it did make sense. But in the beginning, I would say every logical person would come and tell you not to do this. Similarly, we said, we were going to try and build a global company. And again, people would come out and say, hey, you don't build a global company. And frankly, globally, if anybody did something global, it was always the US. And we didn't actually we built a global company, and B, we didn't go to the US first. We went to the Eastern markets. We went to East as against going West. And that was, again, a change in strategy based on I would argue, something that felt right about it. And I'm glad we made those decisions, because the first 3-4 years of our existence was, has a lot to do with those decisions that we made at that point of time. It did give us the confidence to say that, look, if you have faith in some things, and if you are able to feel what is right, you should go for it. And I think we did. We did go through that phase. The next few years, an entrepreneurial journey, by the way, always has these ups and downs, and whatever you want to call them. The next few years after that, roughly about 2012 to 2015, 16, I would say were more about the grit and perseverance, because every entrepreneurial story, and you can pick any one of them, irrespective of the stage that they are in right now, they would have their ups and the downs. And given the early days of us, when the going was great, the highs were much higher. And when the goings was not as good, you were taken to the abyss. And we would feel that, because it was very much in the press, in the media, and you would feel a lot more than the reality of what you were getting hit with. But it was a way for life to pull you down and to tell you that, look, you have to be grounded even in the not just in life, but even in business, in order to build the right business. And I think it was a lesson that, in hindsight, I would argue, taught us a lot. It taught us many things that we do today very well. But that phase of few years was very important for us to go through it, so that we could come out of it stronger. Now, a lot of times you don't come out of them stronger, and you can, and that'd be sad. But I think we were able to do so. So we were challenged in terms of our business not scaling as quickly as it was. We were seeing the market landscape in the advertising industry change. Out there, of course, the big companies like Google and Facebook were essentially putting their might out there in those years. The ad tech as an industry had suddenly become not a sexy industry anymore, and we were forced into a scenario where what we had done till date was mostly to lead our business strategy based on venture capital dollars. We had to essentially become self-sustainable, financially independent company overnight. And when I say overnight, it took us almost about 6 months to probably get to that phase. But I would argue and tell you that being an financially independent company was a phenomenal stage to be at for a company like ours, because it gave a lot of things. It taught us how to be disciplined. It taught us how to actually build a robust business. It taught us the value of making money, because one of the objectives of a, of an organization, of a company, is to essentially generate profits. And it was an alien world, for a long period of time. And we're very proud of the fact that we were in that phase, and we kind of really dealt with it very strongly, and came out of it. So we became financially independent. We ran the company the way it should be. And that's why I use the word grit and perseverance, because you had a negative onslaught onto you, and you were able to essentially turn the engine around and actually make it a sustainable machinery. At the same point, I think we discovered our soul also in that time period, and therefore, the third phase of our journey was also finding our soul. And I know it's not the most lucrative conversations that people have, but it is important to know who you are. It is important to realize that in the business of technology, people matter. And frankly, that's the only thing that matters, especially in today's world where technology cycles have, less than about 3 to 5 years in which technology changes. The only thing that remains constant is people. And if they are also changing, then you're never going to be able to come out of these kind of things. And so, we really needed to understand why people come to work, what motivates people, what motivates human being, what keeps them excited, why are they even working for a company like InMobi? Why would they come to us? And we made some drastic changes in the way we understood people, in the way we changed our values, and brought out a completely redefined culture for ourselves, because we realized that our only asset, frankly, is the people. Everything else is more or less commodity. Strategy is also commodity, because it's changing so fast that you can't actually have a robust strategy that will last you for many, many years. And we have seen this not just for startups like us in those days, but even for large companies that doesn't hold true. And so we really changed our culture, and we really focused a lot on people. We focused on growth mindset. We focused on giving people autonomy. We actually started to trust our people, truly trust our people. We cared for our people. We gave them big charters, and in return we got the same. We got their faith in us. We got trust in return. We got care in return. And I'm so happy today, because that change was probably the most important change for us, because today, as we sit at about 2000 over 2000 people, almost about 40% of 40+% of the company has been with us for more than 5 to 6 years. And that's a very rare phenomena. If you look at my leadership team today, I would argue about 70-80% of the leadership team, and I mean the broader leadership, like the top 100 people, the 70-80% of them have been with us for at least 5 years. Most of them have been with us for 7 to 8 years. And that is the biggest IP that I think we've been able to create, because if you want to expand, if you want to fight the tough ones, if you want to create something that is more generational, you actually have to essentially, not just create an all-star team, but you also have to create a sense of family in that. And I think we've been able to merge this concoction of these two, opposing theories into one, and create an environment that we feel very, very happy about, and feels like home to me. It feels like home to most of the people, and that's why we love to be where we are. Despite not being able to meet with our people for the last so many, or now over a year and a half now. So I think that was one other big outcome of that tough phase that we went through, where we did find our soul. After that, I think our best period started, and I think there were two things that we did, and this is 2017 to, let's say, 2020, right? That period of 3 to 4 years. I would say in that period we simultaneously did two things. We did innovation, and we did significant execution at scale. And it's an important thing to talk about, because what we were doing is that on our enterprise side of the business, we were actually changing the engine while the flight was on. And we crafted a vision for ourselves in the enterprise side of the business, which was very long term, and we decided to stay with it. I will not bore you with that with the exactness of the strategy, but we put a flagpole long out there and said, hey, we're going to go for this, because an advertising industry is an industry that is going to be there no matter what. And if we want to be one of the top players in that space, we need to take a long-term view versus a short-term view of doing the next big thing that is just out there, and therefore the next 1 year and be with it. We took a long view to that space, and I think very, very happy in where we stand in that space today. One of the largest players in the world, very sustainable business, growing rapidly, and we expanded ourselves, significantly in that period, but with a lot of discipline. And I do want to call this out to say, the discipline, people confused the fact that if you're disciplined, you will not be able to grow fast. Actually, it's the contrary. When you're disciplined, you actually grew much faster, versus when you were not disciplined, you were spending a lot of money. And of course, we can chat about these topics, but there's a lot of capital in Indian market today, and it's great for the Indian startup industry. But the true innovation, if you actually get into the depth of it, is happening in companies, and by companies, even though they may have raised capital, are the ones that are basically saying, hey, capital is not the reason why I will succeed. It is the true innovation that I'm going to do, which is the second part of this whole phase in 2017, 2020 that we got into, where we crafted some phenomenal innovation within the company, and a lot of risk taking was done by people because they had no reason to feel that they will be reprimanded if that risk didn't pay off. And we created, Glance out of that. It's one of the largest consumer platforms today in the world. We had no bone of a consumer internet company, by the way. We were an enterprise software company. And within that same environment, we were able to create one of the largest consumer internet company on the planet today. And it's scaling rapidly like a wildfire across India and Asia already, and will go across the globe. And so to me, the power of innovation, the power of disciplined execution, both came together in that period. And therefore, I say, we were able to do multiple things, at that point of time. And, I'm very proud today that, look, within InMobi's enterprise business, we were the first product company to create a global product company out of India. And we created that and we scaled that. I'm equally proud of the fact that we are probably the first consumer internet company that's created from India and is going global at the scale at which it is. It is one of the top 10 consumer properties in the world today already. And we have, with advertising, we really went in, and our goal and mission is to, change the advertising landscape with new age technology in the way it's happening already, and we are doing that. With consumer internet, our Glance product, it's very simply put, we are changing the way consumers use their mobile phones, and that's already happening. With I think we have close to about 400 million odd devices on which Glance already sits across Asia, and it's growing at about at a pretty rapid pace. So we feel very excited about where we are today. And as the phase we are in now, post that innovation, is we are in a significant scale up mode. Where we started off with InMobi Marketing Cloud as the one business. Today we have multiple businesses, and we are scaling all of those multiple businesses across the board. And each one of those businesses has huge potential to grow, and therefore the underlying thing for me has been we have not lost our craziness. We continue to have that craziness. We take a lot of risk with regards to that. We make our decisions from our gut still. Yes, we have become more disciplined despite being crazy and risk taking and making decisions from gut. We have made sure that it is our internal people who scale up and actually lead these businesses for us, which is what allows us to create these, fight on multiple fronts in the way we are fighting. And we have shown that we can do so across the enterprise software business and the consumer internet business. So therefore, kind of cover a broad spectrum of technology. And I think the biggest reason, personal around the founders that we have, is that we can build I have an absolute belief that India is, we uh, as a company can really build software that from India that can serve the world, and that's what we are doing today. And we are proud of having done that. And yes, the journey is just started. As they say, 10 years, 10, 12 years is the first innings, the first day of the test match. So yeah, so we just done the first day of the test match. We still have many more sessions to go and a lot more to do. We just now got the sense of the pitch, so we'll go on from there. But again, thank you for inviting me, and absolutely enjoyed this.
Thank you, Naveen. I mean, you have summarized it so well. I mean, I'm wondering what more questions should I ask. But of course, as a journalist, I'm always itching to ask you so many questions, which I will not ask in the interest because I had assured you that there will be no business-related questions since this is all about entrepreneurship. So, friends, you have already heard Naveen tell his own story in his own to tell his story in his own words as such, and what an engaging story that was. But probably what you may not know is that Naveen comes from a family of academics. So, Naveen, you were literally born on the IIT Kanpur campus. And I remember our conversations. So, hardcore academics, people who are like, so well accomplished people, your father, your grandmother, and yet you turn to entrepreneurship. I mean, it obviously was an afterthought.
Yeah, of course. Look, clearly it shows that I was not good enough to to get into, deep education. So probably, my grandmother, she passed away a few years ago, but she always was, upset with me that I didn't go for a PhD because that was the epitome of going deep into a topic and really understanding it. But having said that, I think you're right. Look, growing up on the IIT campus, every conversation, whether it's on your own dining table or whether you have it across the campus, was always around education and the power of education and the power of research on how it changes the world and how it involves generations. And so it was a very noble, lucrative, and very respectful thing to do. I think at some point of time in that phase, I did realize that I wanted to bring all of this into an application, because a lot of the research getting into application was where I also feel India was lacking. It's not the case anymore because we are creating a lot of startups. But if you think about a lot of the work that does happen in across the academia today, how does that come to work? How do consumers get to see it, and how does the world see the power of it? And I think that was always lingering in my mind, but I didn't know how to do this because in growing up in the 90s, the big things were only done by the Tatas and the Birlas and those guys, and there was not enough of an understanding on how one could go about it. I think it was only when I was exposed to some of that in my business school did I realize that there is a possibility that being coming from a middle class town in UP, one can actually make it happen. And I didn't have much to lose, frankly, at a in my 20s. So you went
But there
for
was
it.
also there was also that tussle between after in the later stages between a really good secure job that would have taken you places anyway since you already accomplished out there, and that was a reputed firm. I mean, today one of the top reputed firms, and and getting into entrepreneurship into a ship that you do not know where it is going to lead you, how it is going to pan out. So
Yeah,
how
no,
did
no,
you take that decision? Because I think a lot of young entrepreneurs might be going through the same journey. A lot of young people might be thinking, should I leave this job? What if I don't get the funding? What happens?
yeah. Look, if you try and put all of these things on a logical level, entrepreneurship never makes sense logically. And that's why you have to be crazy. You have to be logical. You are going against the odds. The odds are not in your favor, but you're still taking the punt for it, right? So And that's why, as an entrepreneur, you're essentially looking for, that one ray of hope, because that's what you're able to hang on to, and that's what makes entrepreneurship more, difficult yet exciting at the same time, because you're questioning the norm, both in terms of what you're about to do and in terms of the business model that you're going to pick up, and everyone around you is going to basically tell you not to do it, for all the right reasons, by the way. So you can't even blame the people for it. And so I wouldn't put it down to, putting it as a logical choice. It Yes, one can think about it logically, but you don't make the decision. So in my view, I think the decisions, all the great decisions in life, frankly, if I were to kind of look back over my 10, 12, or whatever years of life I've really spent making decisions, have been the ones that come from the heart. And it's hard to say what does heart mean, but you just have to feel the decision and you say, okay, this just feels right. And you have to somehow figure out that you're not in the business of pleasing many people, that you're not about there to basically tell everyone and justify to everybody why you're doing this. And yes, I was in that zone for a period of time to say, hey, I'm doing this because of A, B, and C reasons, only later on to realize that this is just losing battle, because you're not doing it for those reasons. You're trying to do this for your own self, and whether you succeed or fail may not be as important and necessary at some. And you realize this a little later, because I think I would have regretted not trying, even if I had succeeded, and so probably would have felt hollow in my own self, and now I don't. So yeah, so that's at least. So there's no. I don't have a great reason to, logical
Fair
reason.
enough. Yeah, I mean, yes, many of these actions actually defy logic, and you're right. I mean, entrepreneurs, if they follow logic, probably they never build. We are enough evidence on that on the other side. So we just stick to jobs, basically. We all actually create a lot of employment, scale up companies. Having said that, there are also stages like M Coach was one of the stages, probably where you said, okay, is it really worth the fight? I mean, today you're the darling of the media, but not so in 2007-8 when M Coach was happening. I still recall those days, and you recall it equally. So, what happened during those years? How, from where do you get that courage? Are there? Is it that you look to your family? Is it that you look inward? Is it that you look at something else? Where do you draw those inner resources from, the courage to fight back?
Yeah, no, and that's a very important question, by the way, because every entrepreneurial journey will have very rapid ups and downs. So how should one deal with those ups and downs is very important. I remember the first, so-called down. It wasn't as public. It was still a lot more. It was a very small company, but you're in the middle of it, right? So whether the storm is big or not, if you're in the middle of it, the storm just seems big, right? It doesn't really matter if if the amount of area it's covering, right? So you're just in the middle of it, so you're always worried about it. I think the first few such so-called storms, one just fought it through, and it was one of those where you just stuck to it and you didn't give up. So I would say the first few was all about not giving up, and you came out of it, and you kind of felt heroic coming out of it. I would say slightly later in the journey, you realize that the ups and the downs, neither should impact me as much. And that's where the inward journey does start. And to your point, yes, it is when you start to go inward a little, you realize the what you're doing and what you're trying to do was a little childish, and didn't require it. It stems from a lot of the fears that we all carry, of kind of showcasing ourselves as a big success. But if you kind of get to the core reason and the core purpose of why you're doing this, you probably would not have to run through so much of the battle. And I think in the last few years, the battles don't bother as much. It is part of the daily routine, and if there is an up, that's great, because you know that there is a down which will come. If there is a down, there is an up which will come. So you just have to be part of that thing and not get impacted in either case. What we do stay true to is a longer term vision. What we do stay true to is what we have committed to being as a company from in terms with our people. What we do stay true is the fact that we will be audacious and crazy, and and we'll do things that we feel right about, and we do that in most of the cases, not all the cases. And I think that's the formula in between seemed to become too complex to now we have been able to simplify that, and therefore we are all okay. We don't search for our names to say, look, we must appear in some media here and there. We don't search for it's just simple. Let's deliver value to the customer. Let's do right by our people. Let's make sure that we are disciplined about ourselves. It's just a simple. It's back to the basics, by the way. Which, but it's funny, but if you see all the phenomenal companies across the globe, which may not be startups, I don't think we are a startup anymore. But if you look at a lot of the companies that are not the startups, they're very disciplined about the way they go about building their business, right? And over a 10-year period, they grow phenomenally, and they build something pretty large. And one should absolutely learn from them on how systematically they go about building those businesses.
And how do you unwind? I mean, I remember that when you were young, on the IIT campus, I think you told me that you were good at cricket and basketball, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
So how do you unwind now? Do you still play cricket with your kids, basketball,
Yes,
music?
one of the things about pandemic was that I got a basketball hoop in our backyard. Yes, there is a bit of that happens.
Are you still good?
I am not as good anymore. I'm not as good. I get beaten by my kids now, so which is also I don't know how to read that, but yes, maybe I'm getting old, or maybe they're getting better, and maybe I'm just not good enough at it. There are a few things that I still do, which is important. I think one is exercising, which is important, because if you want to run a long play, you just have to be healthy, right? So I think that's a part of a regimen. It's regimented for me to exercise. And second, recently I've also picked on meditation to essentially be a lot more deeper about self, and it's really helped me. So those are the two things that.
This is formal meditation, something like Vipassana or something, or is it something that breathing exercise?
I just do it. I just do my own meditation. Yeah.
That's great. Something that you have learned and imbibed over a period of time. Okay.
Yeah.
And before we wrap up, of course, Naveen would love you to tell our young entrepreneurs some words of wisdom, some advice, because I think on the one hand, what we see is that a lot of people get attracted to the so-called startup culture. One is because they think it's as you said, it's not about running wild, but it's all about discipline. But at the same time, I think there's always this layer of the valuations, and everybody thinks they can make $1 million in the just on the fly, which is not the case whenever we hear entrepreneurs. So what's your advice to the youngsters?
Yeah, look, I think there are a few things which are very important. I think one, to be wild and to have big audacious plan and a vision is very important, right? Because otherwise, why should we even want to do this? I think India is absolutely getting there. I remember about 10 years ago, that used to be something that one would find not having enough, audaciousness was not the core to us. And I think that's changed for sure. I would say the second thing is still the focus on people is not as important, because it's not something that gets talked about in the boardrooms as much. But if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a CEO, you have to essentially figure out how to really be deep about your people. And that's not superficial, it's got to be deep, right? So that's the second part I would say. Third, I would say is, there has to be a metric that an entrepreneur should keep for himself, to say every month the amount of money you spend, one should actually be able to put out to say how much equity you burnt. Uh, I think people have forgotten that burning money led businesses. Uh, that's not the best mode of doing it. There are multiple issues with that. One is you're going after the wrong metric to begin with. Second, the cash to valuation ratios are very high, which means that you've raised a lot of cash and your valuation is high, but because you raised a lot of cash, right? So that's not a good multiple to be sitting at. So one should actually monitor that. Third, if you think about this, across the country, there must be close to 40, $50 billion companies now, startups. And that's great. That's so good for the country. But has that really translated into society, the up-leveling of society's financial status? That's not yet happened, because the amount of money that the companies end up raising, there is hardly anything left for people to take away. And so therefore, if you go to the West and you see the companies, when the companies got created, the people who contributed to it, the wealth got distributed to them, and therefore that got distributed to the broader society. So therefore, entrepreneurship was actually a way for evolution of a generation, and that's not necessarily happening in India today. That evolution is not necessarily happening because the money is, it's not going. It's only going to handful of people, which are either the investors or maybe the few top people. So the society at large is not getting the benefit of the way it should have. And I think that's a function of the amount of money companies end up raising, and not really spending enough time on what they should be trying to do to build a more sustainable business. And that's where the point around discipline and sustainability becomes important, because if as an entrepreneur you have a broader goal of making impact in society, it's not actually going to happen if you actually end up raising too much capital. So those are the few points I would say. And the last one I would add is to say, a lot of entrepreneurs, and much younger, 10 years ago, I would be very influenced by what let's say the investor is telling you. In reality, I think the true success of an entrepreneur would be when they are able to make the decisions on their own and are not influenced too much by. They should take the inputs, but they're not influenced by what others are telling them. Because the reality is, the reason you're doing this is because somebody somewhere believes in you, and your belief in yourself has to continue in order for the thing to succeed. So those are a few points I would mention.
Great. I mean, real good insights. So, friends, I would have loved to ask Naveen many more questions, and perhaps I'll have to find a different another time to engage with him. But for now, remember that whenever you hear of unicorn, whenever you hear of the word decathon, I think so, and now hectagons, I mean, amazing kind of words for 10 billion, 100 billion. I mean, the valuations are simply unimaginable. I think there's always that element of the struggle that entrepreneurs have gone through. That life has not been easy for them. It's all about people, it's all about discipline, it's all about hard work, and it's all about giving back to society. I think these are the few points that Naveen has raised. And Naveen, thank you once again for your time. It's been a pleasure engaging with you, and wish you all the best, and hope to see a lot more of InMobi. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Leslie. Thank you. I really enjoyed this.